This is Tax Pro Nation, the home of independent tax professionals. Find community, maximize your earnings, and live life on your own terms. I'm your host, Jeff Dolan, Vice President of Pronto Tax School.
And I'm your co-host, Andy Fry, founder and CEO of Pronto Tax School. My grandfather started Pronto Income Tax in Los Angeles back in 1965. My father and I carried on the family business and became tax business entrepreneurs. I launched Pronto Tax School because I know that given the right training and tools, you too can experience the freedom the tax business can offer. I grew up with a dad who wasn't working all the time, who had time to spend with his 5 children, who could take us to the beach on a Tuesday if that's what he wanted to do. The tax business can be an ideal business for people who want that kind of freedom, but it's got to be done purposefully in order to work that way.
And that's why we're here, to help you navigate your journey as an independent tax professional. Don't do it alone. Join the nation. Let's jump in. Welcome to episode 1, where we will be discussing step 1 of the 9 steps of the Pronto Path, which is our map of the journey you will take as an independent tax pro. In this opening series, we are tackling 1 step per episode. Step 1 is called initiation. All right, Andy, good morning.
Good morning. Good Monday morning.
Yeah, good. Happy Monday.
A great day to podcast.
So we're talking about this first step called initiation of the Pronto Path.
You got to start somewhere, baby.
So take me back to before you were certified. What is that like for folks?
So it's a great question. And even you bringing up the word certified is a good segue into what this initiation step looks like, because actually legally we're not allowed to use the word certified unless you're a certified public accountant. And so that would be one of the many, many misconceptions about getting into the tax business is, what's the name for it when it's not licensed, it's registered, it's not certified, and that just kind of indicates some of the confusion that people feel when they get into the business. When I was getting into the business, I had, an obvious advantage of my dad already having been in the business for decades. So it was a pretty easy process in terms of, hey, go take this course, go take this 60-hour course, knock it out, pass it. And then I'm even going to help you get registered and all that. And so my dad actually, even within our company, he's just one of those very helpful individuals where he will actually just help you get registered. And I know that a lot of our listeners, like if you're thinking about getting in the business now, you probably don't have someone like that necessarily to take care of it for you. So you want to listen closely to this episode and learn what those steps are. But the good news is it's pretty simple.
Great. So why do people get into the tax business to begin with?
So there's really 4 main reasons that we see, especially independent tax professionals, liking and choosing this business and actually loving this business. And number 1 would be you gain knowledge of the tax laws and quote unquote tax loopholes to save yourself and your own family a lot of money over the years. So even if you never, become, making $100,000 a year off doing taxes or whatnot, just the ROI from the knowledge that you have about how taxes work, it helps you to be knowledgeable and know how the system works and have more money at the end of the day and have more control of your own finances. So that would be number 1. And it's a great place to start for new people getting into the business to realize how valuable this knowledge actually is. Now, secondly, which a lot more people would maybe aim for, is if you play your cards right and once you're established, and don't take this as any kind of earning claims or anything like that, but you can make, say, $20,000, $70,000 or more without working for the entire 12 months of the year. In fact, working a pretty small portion of the year. So that's pretty appealing for people that want that lifestyle type of business where, they're not on a 9-to-5 for $365 per year. So a third reason that we see is if you do the business right and do it purposefully, like we talk about in this podcast, you have that schedule flexibility. And so this is huge, Jeff, for I know you have young kids just like I do, and you don't want to miss your kids' games or, recitals, or just have that flexibility. I mean, we both love to work hard and love what we do, but also, just to have some autonomy over your own schedule and not be missing those moments that only come, once in a lifetime. We were just talking this morning about, how fast does it go with these young kids? It's just like so quick, right?
Yep. I mean, our daughters are what? 1 and 2. So yeah, I mean, they're growing so fast, and the ability to be there and not feel that pressure all the time to, I got to go into work, or I got to go on this trip, and I got to figure out what's going on. That's very attractive to somebody getting into the business.
Yeah, and I'd say that's, of the people that we educate through Pronto Tax School and break into the business, I really think that's a huge factor for people, especially if they're already working, say, a job where they don't have that. It's something that they really dream about. And different people use that schedule flexibility in different ways. For some people, it's spending time with their kids. Other people, it may be being a caretaker to their elderly parent and being able to be there for them, just like their parent was there for them when they were a kid, or traveling. Or just, if you have a hobby that you really love, like one of our newer tax business owners that we help, he loves dragon boat racing.
Dragon boat racing?
Yeah, apparently it's like a big subculture, and it's something that actually developed way back in China thousands of years ago. And he explained it to me. He kind of put the knowledge on me. I was like, whoa, okay, this is real. But it's basically the only sport where men and women compete together on equal terms, and it's almost like a rowboat, but it's like a cool looking dragon boat.
Oh, cool.
And it's really awesome. So it's like that's just something that he just loves to do. What's up, Louis? And so that takes time. And you may travel to another city. So that flexibility is very important for a lot of tax professionals. And then lastly,
what about stay-at-home moms?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, that's that idea of when you have that schedule flexibility of, say, a great employee for a tax business would be a stay-at-home mom, because maybe they would work like 9 to 2. And then be able to pick up their kids, right?
While the kids are taking a nap, maybe knocking out some tax returns.
Yeah, exactly. Or helping out in the office. And I mean, we all know that moms are amazing, multitaskers and people that know how to get stuff done. So in a tax business, when you have that compressed time of tax season, that kind of person in the office and in your organization is extremely valuable. And at the same time, maybe you don't need them for, 40 hours a week. So they can make a great contribution while the kids are at school and still be able to pick up their kids and enjoy that part of their life as well.
It kind of reminds me of the school schedule, where you're in school and then you have summers off.
Exactly.
It's kind of like you work really hard and then you get a break, which I kind of missed when I went from school to work. It's like, wait a minute, we don't get summers off? But yeah, I think it's one of those things where you basically condense all of your work for the year into 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, and it's you got to understand that it's less like that than it used to be with the shift of the business, and a lot of things that we'll be talking about during this podcast, such as the more demand from self-employed people and business owners who tend to have more year-round needs. So I think that the business is changing, but it's just bottom line. I mean, where can you get the kind of flexibility that you get in this business?
Right.
Being like an athlete or something. I mean, it's pretty rare. And so it doesn't come free. This podcast not about like trying to advertise that everything's all peaches and cream, but it's very valuable to have schedule flexibility. And also, Jeff, to be involved in a business where that's part of the culture. Like, people are in this business to do that. So that's a lot of times we try to support each other as independent tax professionals to say, that's cool that you do that. That's great that you're into, dragon boat racing. I'm into this.
Right.
And it's part of the culture, and it's kind of expected and enjoyed. And then fourthly, the fourth main reason that people get into the tax business is just you get to help people in a really massive way. I mean, tax is really a stressful subject for a lot of people, and just to be that lifesaver, that hero, it's very exhilarating, frankly, to be able to help people out with their taxes, and it's a lot of fun.
Are you somewhere in your tax career and feeling lost with what to do next? Do you sometimes wish you had a map to show you your next step to reach your full potential as a tax professional? Here at Pronto Tax School, we have developed that guide. We call it the Pronto Path, and we want to share it with you for free. Go to taxpronation.com/path right now. Do you see that because this business is very numbers driven and you got to be detail oriented, that it attracts more introverted people? What have you seen in that? Because it seems like one of the attractive things to me is that I don't have to necessarily travel all the time and be away from my family all the time. It's kind of a more, I can do it at home. I can do it wherever I am. If I am traveling, I can do it wherever I'm traveling, but I don't have to, right?
Correct. And that's another thing that's a trend in the business is being able to work remotely. But also there's a really strong local element to being in the tax business where you're kind of that local resource, and the closer you stay to home and the more you grow your home-based roots, that you can really build a strong business by being strong and being present in your local area. So it kind of flips the script, whereas you have to travel and a lot of times in a corporate position to get that business. It's the other way around in taxes where it's like you'll be at your kid's baseball game and you'll end up talking to a dentist or somebody that owns a local business, right? And it's like you're marketing in your own community just by being around and being cool to other people. And so that's something that a lot of independent tax professionals, really enjoy, being part of the community, making a positive contribution when people need help, being there for them. That's
great. So what kind of salaries do people typically make? I mean, I know you mentioned 20 to 70 a year. Is that normal? Is that what most people starting off are thinking about? Or do most people kind of start off part-time and then they go full-time? Like what does that look like?
So it's definitely something where if you look at businesses and careers that have a good degree of freedom, so you could look at, say, like a real estate agent. What are some other careers that you when you think of freedom, they have freedom? Entrepreneur, let's say, any type of business. So you got to keep in mind that those type of businesses, like if it was so easy, everybody would do it. Right. And so the tax business is definitely something where you have to pay your dues at the beginning. If you have an expectation that you're going to make $20,000 or $50,000 your first tax season, and that's your expectation, and you're not going to be happy, and this isn't going to work out for you if you don't get that, then I would definitely encourage you to adjust your expectation because you're in the apprenticeship phase. So that's not what happens. Like if you walk into a situation where, like say for me, it's some people look at me and they're like, you were born on third base and you think you hit a triple or something like that. So like in the sense that like I already was, when I first started my tax career, I was already in an office, that had a bunch of clients. Previous person had left, so there's a lot of other challenges that are associated with that too. But at least you're like starting from something, right?
You grew up in the business, in other words.
Yeah, and it's like, people knew my dad and things like that. So I'm not here to discount anything about like what you can do. I mean, you certainly can make $20,000. I've seen people make $50,000 their first year. But expectation-wise, it's something where I would not say to jump off and quit your day job until you're a little bit more established and you've gone through that apprenticeship phase.
So you can really start this off part-time, right?
And that's what most people do.
Because you're building a business. I mean, let's not, it is a business. You have to really plan it and know what you're doing, grow your business, know what your market is. And we're going to be going through that in the subsequent steps from here. But this step is initiation. This is where I'm thinking about getting into the business. I'm attracted to it. And what am I doing now? So let's say that I want to get into the tax business, or this is attractive to me. What are some of the things that I'm doing to start?
So I think it's really important to realize that this podcast yes, it's for independent tax professionals, but it's also for anybody that's in the tax business. So you don't necessarily have to have your own business to be that intrapreneur, somebody that's being entrepreneurial inside an organization. And so if you're listening to this and saying, well, I don't have my own business, maybe this isn't for me. Well, actually, it is for you, because when you're building up your tax career, tax clients, they want to go to a person, ideally. So you really are building, it may not be your own business per se, but you're going to be learning a lot of the same skills and benefiting from the same activities that a self-employed person will, similar to a real estate agent, where you may work at a company, right? But at the end of the day, you're really building your own client base. Okay, so I want to encourage people to think of that. And I would say when you're attracted to the business and you want to get into it, start with the basics of what's required in your state to become a professional. Okay, just start with the basics, look into it. And so we have a lot of resources, at prontotaxschool.com that can show you exactly what the requirements are. And you'll be surprised that it's actually the last white collar profession or professional, service business that I know of that is literally incredibly easy and fast to get into. And in most cases, Jeff, which a lot of people can't believe this, you can actually become a tax pro with no college degree or other formal education at all, period. And so I know your eyes just went wide on that. And when I've told people that, they are really shocked. When I say that, what does that make you think? It's kind of scary, or?
It is kind of scary. It's like, if I'm going to trust a financial professional with my money, it's kind of like trusting a doctor with my body, right? It's very personal. I got to trust them, So if they didn't have to go through any hoops to get to do what they do, maybe that's scary.
And that's what a lot of people think. And the ironic thing about it is that people don't know that. And so if you're thinking about getting in the business, that may have surprised you as well. You're like, what? I can't, does not compute, cannot process. And you think, oh, this person's like a doctor. Yeah, not really in the sense of, doctors, it's what, look at the process they have to go through. I mean, it's crazy. So actually, even Oregon, Jeff, which is the toughest state to become a tax professional, your basic requirements are to take an 80-hour course, which can be completed online, and then pass a test with 75% and pay a minimal fee. So that's the toughest state. Now, 46 out of 50 states, as of this, when I'm saying this can always change, so don't hold me to this 2 years down the line. 46 out of 50 states have absolutely zero requirements for education or testing for tax professionals. And the 4 states that do have requirements would be Oregon, California, Maryland, and New York. So just to start off, you want to research those requirements and find out exactly what it is. But bottom line is what you're going to find is that it's not some impossible thing or takes a long time to do. It's actually very straightforward and quite fast.
Yeah, to me, it seems like, now that I'm thinking about it, it's almost binary, right? Because the state's going, you either filled your taxes out correctly or you didn't. And so if you're a tax professional that helps people fill them out correctly, well, then that's your certification, quote unquote. That's your ticket to get into the game. If you don't know how to do that, well, then you have a lot of repercussions, right? Not only losing your clients, but hurting them.
Right.
So you're incentivized to get it right. And the states are basically taking the position of just get it right. That way we'll know that you're legit.
Well, it's a very interesting dynamic too, which a lot of people are, again, this initiation phase, it's kind of cool that we call that initiation because there's so many things that you don't know or that are misconceptions about getting into the business. So we're going to be able to kind of, adjust those and put them to reality. And so one of those examples would be that people that get into the tax business and they think that because they're helping somebody fill out their tax return and they sign it as the preparer, that means that they have some responsibility for that person's taxes.
That's what I would think.
You don't.
As an outsider.
You have, I shouldn't say you have zero responsibility because there are due diligence requirements and other, ethical things that you need to pay attention to. But at the end of the day, that taxpayer has 100% responsibility at all times for every single thing that goes on the tax return. So you need to know that when you sit down with a client, that when you have them sign their tax return, they need to understand what they're signing, or else you're not doing your job.
Wow.
But at the same time, you don't need to think that, hey, like this person may not be telling me everything, so that means I'm going to go to jail. So you want to be familiar with how that works and make it very clear to clients that I'm here to assist you with your taxes based on the information that you provide. That's a very important thing for people that are new to the business to understand.
Yeah, that really increases the trust factor too. Because I would think that if I got in trouble filling out my own taxes, that I would want to hire a professional to push some of that liability on them just because I don't know something, right? Like I'm in a mess with my taxes and I give up. I need to go to a professional. And if he messes it up or she messes it up, well, then it's on him or her, right? And so I think as a tax professional, educating me that no, I'm still 100% responsible, that's very important.
It is. It's super important. And you'll have, certain policies at a good company, like we've always done, is if it's our mistake and there's interest and penalties or something like that, like we would pay it. But the tax itself, it's your tax. So that's something that is very important for new tax professionals or people thinking that getting in the business of what it means to serve that client. Just keep in mind that the taxpayer has that responsibility. And you mentioned the idea of that. Why are the states not more aggressively regulating it? Or why isn't there a federal license to become a tax preparer? I mean, you need a license to cut hair. That's something that people say all the time. Like, how could you not need a license to deal with something so complex as taxes? Well, they actually tried to do that. The IRS tried to make a nationwide, like a test, essentially, a competency exam. And that was, I think, in 2011. It was actually ruled unconstitutional.
Wow.
And the reason why, Jeff, is because the tax code, they've made it so complicated that many people cannot fill out their own tax returns. And so it's almost like a service that it's just needed. And they've ruled it unconstitutional that you have to require a license for somebody to assist someone with that service just because the code is so complicated. And so it's something that we are expecting in the next couple of years, as you and I have talked about, that they will put in a nationwide requirement. But as of now, it's only 4 states that have requirements. Still, if you're listening to this, check your state requirements. And that's a good place to start for getting into the business.
Where would I check if my state requires anything?
It's usually a pretty straightforward matter of the old Google. You know what I mean? Get on the Google, or you can contact, say, our tax education hotline, 310-422-1283, or visit our website. We provide resources about the requirements. But like I said, it's going to be a short research trip for you on that one because it's pretty straightforward. You basically get to the state's website, they'll lay out what you need to do. It's usually going to be some education, which can be done online, which we do. Maybe some kind of testing, probably not, and a paying of a very minimal fee.
So if I am not sure what I need to do in my state, can I go to prontotaxschool.com and find out? Or do I need to just Google it, and if there's no information, then I just kind of guess that there's no requirement in my state?
Yeah, the place that I would go, just because, if someone's listening to this podcast later, Jeff, like the states are kind of updating their requirements. So I would go to the actual state website for your state, like put in like Maryland tax preparer requirements and go to the actual state website. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's pretty much a 1-page, research project. They'll tell you what you need to do. At that point, there's an education component. You want to either get over to prontotaxschool.com or, God forbid, choose another provider, knock out the education part of it. And I also want to make a point that just because you can go pro with no education in most states, it doesn't mean that you should. You know what I mean? I mean, we can do a lot of things in life that we shouldn't do. Right. So just think realistically, like if you're sitting there thinking like, oh, my state doesn't have requirements. Sweet. Like I can just go and just like start doing it. Like that's really that attitude is really a disservice to your clients. And if that is your attitude, I think that there's other businesses because taxes is lifelong learning. So you want to learn, whether it's required or not, you want to learn, because when you sit down with somebody, you don't want to mess up their taxes. On the contrary, you want to optimize their taxes. You want to have a great service for them so that you get more referrals. So just because you don't have to get educated, I would still very much encourage you to do some initial training.
Sure. And, that's why I said it earlier. It's almost self-regulating.
Exactly.
It seems attractive until you sit down with a real client and go, uh-oh, do I really understand how to do a S Corp, business, or do I really understand what I'm doing with this complex scenario that this client is giving me? I mean,
or even just simple stuff. When you're starting out, like, you'd be surprised how tough it is to get through your first few tax returns if you don't have any training or any support, which is where we step in and try to give you that training and support. It's like you said, it's not a lot of fun. I mean, you're sitting there literally sweating. Because clients, they are not, easy to deal with all the time. So yeah, it is self-regulating a lot of times.
And they want answers. They don't want you to go look it up later. You're in front of them, talking to them. It's like the doctor that says, hold on a minute. The industry I'm from, there's a reason you sit in that waiting room for a while, right?
Sure.
They're going back and hitting their version of Google and trying to find out what they just looked at on you.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's super complex. And I think, even myself trying to fill out my own taxes over the years, I used to think that the IRS explanation of everything just told me exactly what I needed to do to fill it out perfectly. Man, I don't know who writes those things, but wow, it's so difficult. And I mean, I'm college educated and it's still difficult, right? So, you do have to know what you're doing for sure.
Yeah. And you want to feel confident in what you're doing. And even when you're starting out. So a lot of times with this initiation phase, it's, choosing the right clients for you, with the level that you're at, which is super important, because you want, when you're starting out with anything new, we all know how it goes. The more positive experiences you have when you're just starting with something, the better you're probably going to do for that long term, right? Like I remember when I was a kid, my grandfather manufactured me this basketball hoop that he made like the basket like twice as big as a normal basket.
He manufactured it?
Yeah, he like made it and welded it.
Oh, wow.
And put like two rims together.
Oh, wow.
That was like twice as big as a normal hoop. So I couldn't miss. And so ever since then, I always thought like, okay, I got a good chance to make this no matter where it is.
Did he make it really low so you could dunk all the time?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Are you thinking about getting into the tax business, but not sure where to start? Maybe you're not even sure the tax business is the right fit for you, and you don't want to invest a lot of money or time quite yet. You just want to get a taste of tax knowledge and see if you like it. Or maybe you're an experienced tax pro and you see someone else in your world who needs an introduction to the tax business, but you don't have time to teach all the basics. If either of those situations sound familiar to you, you need to check out the Pronto Tax School Basic Income Tax course today. It's fun, entertaining, and gets you a real IRS credential. Go to taxpronation.com/basic to find out more. All right, so just to summarize so far, I've researched the tax business. It's attractive to the lifestyle that I want to live. I understand that this is a real business. I've got to study, but I'm prepared to do it, and I want to get into it. So I go to the irs.gov website, and I do some Google searches, and I find that, okay, I got to take a course to get educated. I go to prontotaxschool.com. I can see there's some education there. There's education elsewhere, right? Is there like a tax pro number that I get? Do I get put on a database somewhere? Like, what's my next step from here?
So, no matter what state you're in, the only federal requirement for helping other taxpayers to fill out their tax return as a professional is to have what's called a preparer tax identification number, a PTIN, which is issued by the IRS. And so if you go to irs.gov/PTIN, I believe it is, or just search irs.gov PTIN, you'll be able to see that you can apply online. And it literally, in most cases, not all cases, it literally takes 10 to 15 minutes. They issue you an ID number, and then that ID number is it's your ID number with the Internal Revenue Service. So that's what you would put on the bottom of each tax return that you prepare, and you'll program it in the tax software, or if you work with somebody else, they'll put that in. And that kind of tracks you, so to speak, as far as the tax returns that you prepare for other people.
So everyone has to have that?
Everyone has to have a PTIN. And anyone that's preparing tax returns for a fee, as a professional, must have a PTIN no matter what state you're in. And they used to charge for that, Jeff. It was like $64 or something like that. But the IRS actually lost that in court as well. So now they're free. So you could, after you listen to this podcast, you could pop on and probably get a PTIN. But again, that education component, that training component, don't underestimate how important that is. And that's, what we really try to give you.
Okay, so I've got my PTIN, I've got my education courses. And what kind of education courses am I looking for? Like beginner courses? Is there a name for it? What are those? What am I looking for?
So the most common name for it would be the basic income tax course. And that's, depending the state you're in, Jeff, that may be like a technical term, like that's what it's called in that state. Like for instance, in California, it's called the basic income tax course, and it's a 60-hour course, 45 hours federal tax education, and 15 hours California tax education. But at prontotaxschool.com, for instance, we would have one federal version, which doesn't include the California part, and then one that's for California. So that goes back to checking and making sure you know what the requirements are for your state, like if there's hours requirements, et cetera, making sure that your education provider is, approved by the IRS, approved by a state agency if you need that for your credentialing. And it's basically an introduction to the tax system, shows you all the fundamental concepts that you need to know. And in the tax business, it's something that things change so quickly that you have to have a strong foundation, first of all. And that's going to be the most important thing for you. So don't think of that initial, course or training as like, oh, this is so basic, or like what? No, this is something that's going to inform you for the rest of your life if it's a good course. Because once you know the fundamentals, like for instance, what a deduction is, like what a tax credit is, what's the difference between a deduction and a tax credit. A lot of people want to get into taxes and get into all the little weeds of these specific situations. Start out by building that solid foundation, and it'll definitely help you throughout your career as you face those more complex issues.
Great. So I've researched my state. Maybe I'm in one of the states you mentioned before, and I actually have to get registered there. So Oregon, California, Maryland, New York, and maybe future ones. But so I have my PTIN federal number, and then I have my state specific number.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
So with those two numbers, am I good to go? Can I start taking on clients at that point, or what do I do next?
So there's kind of two tracks, when you're getting into the business. Is you can, just jump out the gate and start your own thing, or you can work, with somebody else or for somebody else. So those are, it's pretty simple. It's basically a fork in the road of, do you want to start up your own thing right from day one, or do you want to do your apprenticeship, with somebody else at a different company? And so that's going to be a choice that you want to make. If you are, if you're going out on your own, there are more requirements. Like for instance, if you want to electronically file tax returns to the IRS, you have to get what's called an electronic filing identification number, or an EFIN, in order to be able to do that. And that takes about 60 days. So we have a little booklet that we give people for free, which is how to start your own tax preparation and consulting business. And that will take you through the steps, even down to how to think through your marketing, that kind of stuff. But the EFIN would be a really big thing. If you're sitting here listening to this and you're like, I know I want to have my own business, I don't want to work with somebody else even to start, then get that EFIN application underway immediately as a top priority. And also, if you're going to have your own business, Jeff, you have to look at the local requirements in your area just for having any type of business. You know what I mean? Like, do you need a business license? Do you need business registration. So you might want to visit, say, the Small Business Development Corporation, the SBDC in your area, or the SCORE mentoring program. Just like, what do you need to start any business?
That's a good point. Yeah. Don't forget that part, right?
Sure.
You're starting a real business. You still need to do all the normal, small business startup steps.
Yeah, and that's why I don't want to like come off of people hearing this and be like, it's so easy and like it's skipping a bunch of steps. You still got to approach it. Starting a business is something that you got to be very diligent. As diligent as you can at the startup to avoid future problems. So, from the tax side, you need that P10. If you have a state licensing, do that. Knock out your initial training. Get an EFIN if you're going to be self-employed. If you're working for somebody else, that employer will already have that EFIN.
That's interesting. So if I did not want to start my own business yet because I didn't feel ready, what would you say are some other options? Like I've seen H&R Block and Liberty Tax and just commercials. I just saw a commercial yesterday for the tax ladies. There's a group locally here in town, and so do I go and do all this education on my own and then go, apply for a job working with one of these companies, or do I just decide, hey, I want to get into this business and learn and just go work for one of these companies and then they give me all the numbers and training that I need?
It can go either way. Like a lot of people kind of accidentally end up in the tax business because, like, say their aunt needs help at her office, or their cousin has an office and needs some help. And so a lot of tax business owners, including at H&R Block or Liberty Tax, they will kind of assist you through the process that we just talked about. But just in the interest of being proactive, it's always better if the person shows up and they've already done all those things, because it indicates like, wow, they're really taking this seriously. They did their research. And so we actually have employers that would say contact Pronto Tax School, right? And they would want somebody that's already, gone through it. Because when you go through the course, even though it's not that hard, you can do it on your own time, you can do it online, but still it's just like, it shows that you did it. You dedicated the time, you pushed through the little obstacles that you needed to get through. And so for an employer, that's definitely attractive. So yeah, a lot of people start their career at H&R Block. A lot of people start their career at Jackson Hewitt or Liberty Tax. And those places hire a lot of seasonal people. Now, independent tax professionals, it can also be a great opportunity. There are certain challenges with the independent places, which we're trying to address through our school. And I'd say the number one challenge is that when you're a smaller company, like a mom and pop shop, or maybe you have a couple offices, a lot of times you don't have a formal training program.
Right.
And so it's harder to onboard people in the right way. Whereas those bigger companies, they're very good at, training program and like say only putting the tax returns to the new person that like they can handle and all those kind of systems type of stuff. So we're trying to kind of build that platform for independence, but that's something that you want to keep in mind. If you're the kind of person that like you really like a structured environment when you're new, you have to kind of do your own due diligence as far as some of the independent places are not necessarily like that, because remember, the owner may be doing like 1,000 tax returns themselves, and they may not be used to having other employees in the office or a new person who maybe is not up to speed on everything. So just kind of do your own due diligence. At the same time, those independent places, if you find a good mentor, can be also a tremendous place to start.
It seems too like if I go to work for a company, I'm defeating the whole lifestyle part of what we just talked about earlier, right? Like if I go to work for these companies, these big companies, am I just a 9-to-5 employee, or do they let me work from home, or do I got to go into their office, or what is that like?
There's different arrangements, but I would say that it's not an either or thing. Like you can be an independent tax professional that got your start at H&R Block or got your start at Liberty Tax, because there's a lot to learn from those bigger companies, especially when you're starting out. So a lot of those companies, they'll hire, or a lot of tax companies, period, they'll hire like a seasonal tax preparer for like 8 to 10 weeks. So you're not really committed, like you're really not losing that like lifestyle thing.
Is that full time though? Like I'm going to work there every day?
It depends. They actually have a lot of part-time and weekend help as well. So I would say overall, it's pretty flexible. It just depends on the situation, on the needs of the business, on your own, skills, your own who and all the things that normally come into getting a job. But I'd say overall, it's pretty flexible, and they have a lot of people that are say they're a senior that they don't want to work full time, or like you said, they're a stay-at-home mom. So that flexibility again is part of the culture of the tax business, even if you're at a bigger company. So I would say, we don't have to say that you're giving up anything by starting with your best opportunity, wherever that might be.
Right. So let's talk about that. So you had mentioned, knowing someone in the business always helps. And, many independent tax professionals work with friends or family as a starting point. What are some things that, if I'm thinking about getting into this business, that would be, kind of plus ups for me? Like if I'm in an ethnic community group, or I have a lot of trust with a certain group that I'm with, like what are some things I can be thinking about that would put me in a better position?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I hope you can definitely take away from this podcast is these little tips, that can make all the difference for you finding an opportunity. So remember with the tax business, I say remember like you already know it, but a lot of people don't know this, is that it's very ethnic based in a lot of situations. So for instance, ethnic communities often have a lot of success with business. Look at all the immigrants that are, some of the best business owners around. And ethnic communities, people are hardworking people. But they're not huge, generally speaking, like TurboTax adopters, or DIYers. So there's large degree of ethnic communities going to the same tax places that people in that ethnic community would attend, and would be clients at. So think about that. What's your ties to a certain ethnic community? For instance, if you're bilingual, if you speak Spanish, that's a big plus depending on the client base of that business. So say you got into an interview at a tax place that you were thinking about working and they were thinking about hiring you. You want to delve into who are your client groups? What's your client groups? Do you have a lot of Spanish speakers? Is it higher income? Is it lower income? Is it middle income? And understand because at the end of the day, people think it's like a numbers business, but it's very much it's a people connection business.
Right.
Like when you sit down with somebody, can you cause them to trust you?
It's a trust business. I mean, I guess all business is a trust business, but this more so, right?
Oh, I mean, it couldn't get more so. Like if something goes wrong with your taxes, it's not fun for anybody. And so when you're sitting down with somebody, it's about trust. And sometimes just as human nature, that comes down to, does this person speak my language? A lot of people, they may speak English and another language, but when they're talking about their finances, they prefer to speak their native language. So that all of those you're like me things can create that trust and create that value for you as a new tax professional. So especially with being bilingual, and that's a huge factor to consider as you're getting into the business.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about myself. If I immigrated to a country, let's say China, and I didn't know the language, and I needed, to file my taxes, I wouldn't know the first thing about it. So I'd be looking for somebody that I trusted that knew that and studied that spoke English. I mean, that would be the number one person I would go to. I wouldn't just go down the street and go to some, tax preparation business that I didn't know, right? And so, yeah, that kind of resonates. It's funny, I was in Florida for a big conference about, I think last year actually, and the cab driver was from Ethiopia. He was explaining his, I think 7-year journey to get where he was, at that point. He was trying to make money. He was driving Uber. He was, doing all sorts of different things. And I encouraged him and I said, look, the fact that you came from Ethiopia to America and you're a citizen and you're doing all these things, that is amazing.
Mm-hmm, it really
there are so many people that would look to you as a leader to teach that community, how to navigate in America. I mean, that's great. That's huge, right? And so he got really excited because he didn't see that as a positive thing. right? He was, struggling and trying to find his way, and he didn't realize that he brings so much value to his community as a leader.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that if you're a lot of people that get into the tax business, maybe you don't have a college degree, maybe you didn't even graduate high school, and you're thinking like you actually, if you speak Spanish, if you speak Mandarin, if you are involved if you're willing to do sales and marketing and generate business, you have value to the tax business. Beyond a piece of paper that says you have value. It's a self-determined thing of working with clients, caring about people, helping people out, problem solving, including problem solving like for your boss in the office. So I just think that attitude part of it is so important, and just taking the right attitude of, getting in there, learning everything you can, providing as much value as you can, being a problem solver, caring about people. I mean, that's all the things that in a way, that's what makes having a career fun, right?
Right.
So the more you live that out and embrace that, I think this initiation phase is, it gets a lot easier and it gets a lot more fun.
And I mean, that's why we're doing this show, right? I mean, we want to help our customers, our clients, our partners. We want to make sure they feel that we're providing value to them and helping them. As someone trying to get into the business, you really have to figure out, who is your audience? Do you have an audience that trusts you? And how do you provide them the most value? And you can do that through taxes, right? Because every year that comes up and it's kind of a scary thing. If I'm a business owner or if I'm an individual, taxes, So I'm going to look for somebody that I can trust.
Yeah. And we used to say, when we help someone with their taxes, we're helping them with their life. So people go through tough things in their life, and doing people's taxes, you see that up close and personal. You see if somebody loses a family member. You see, okay, they had a new baby. Like, you're up close and personal for all those things. So just taking it beyond, like, we call it like trying to be a why business rather than a what business. Why do I come to you? It's because I trust you. You care about me. Like, you have my best interest in mind. And you can't underestimate that in today's society. It's like most Americans, they don't have like a financial advisor or like somebody like, a lot of wealthy people, they have people that are looking out for their best interests. But most, middle income or lower income people, they deal mostly with financial professionals that are trying to sell them something. So the tax professional a lot of times is the only person in that client's financial world that, if you do it right, if you're doing it correctly, you really have their best interest at heart. And that's a really an awesome bond to build with somebody. And when you build that bond, you're going to notice those referrals start to come in. And that's why we say if there's an ethnic component to that, or even like a workplace component, Jeff, where like you take care of people that work at this bigger company, because you need those pools of referrals. You need people that talk amongst each other like, oh, we all go to that place.
It's so true. I mean, even in, I was doing, B2B corporate sales and healthcare, and, all the top salespeople, you make a good salary. You say, hey, who are you using for your tax prep? Well, I got this guy. He's helping me save all sorts of money, and, go to him. Okay, sweet.
And it makes sense, right? Because people are making around the same amount of money. They probably have the same type of deductions, and that person probably specializes in that area. They know the little tricks and they know how to relate to the people. So I think even if you're starting your business, certainly figuring this part out of it is like 1,000% crucial. But even if you're working at another company, like, strive to understand their client base and get into that mind frame. And the owners, believe me, if they recognize that in you're like, you're so far ahead of the pack.
Yeah, you're light years ahead. There's a book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. And it's an older bestseller, but I think it really speaks to what we're talking about.
Yep.
That's the crucial thing to start with, rather than the what, which is do taxes, right? Tax pros have seen it coming for years. The entrepreneurial wave is here, and that means more opportunity to do corporation, S-Corp, and LLC business tax returns. With the new tax law, they're even more complex and in demand. Professionals who increase their skill set in this area can expect to become more profitable and successful. Pronto Tax School has the perfect online training course for you called Business Tax Verified with CPA Adam Shea. Find out more at taxpronation.com/business. we talked about the different things that we need to do to get started. We talked about the path we can take here to do initiation. What is the expectation, for your first tax season? Let's talk about that. So let's say I get all my, numbers. I kind of pick my niche. I get my business started, either, as a sole proprietor, or I'm doing a DBA and I get registered in my state, my county, whatever I need to do, right? I'm ready to go. And let's say I either go independent or I'm doing some part-time on the side for free, maybe to try to get my feet wet. What can I expect in my first tax season?
So I think it's a pretty wide, it's a wide swath of expectations. If you're working full time and putting in 70 hours a week at an office that already has, 2,000 clients, you're certainly going to, have different expectations than if you're, working for free as an intern, 3 hours a week. So you got to kind of have, see what your opportunity is. I think in terms of expectations of your first tax season, the most important thing is to learn. And if you can get paid for learning during that apprenticeship phase, all the better. A lot of people actually that we've seen this kind of third path open up, which I didn't mention, I should mention, so you have the first path, start your own business right out of the gate, jump in the deep end. And then you have, do an apprenticeship at a company. And there's been this third path that has come out where the IRS has these centers called Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Centers. They're called VITA centers. And so a lot of our students that have been coming out of Pronto Tax School, they will start there. And it's a volunteer thing, but you have supervision there from the IRS as to, are the returns done correctly? You have assistance and training when you need it. So that may be a great way for people to get into the business on, say, a 5-hour a week or 10-hour a week thing. So I think the expectations are you learn as much as you can. If you can get paid doing it, that's great. On the high end, if you have already a busy office and you're stepping into an established role, you can make good money right out the gate. But keep in mind, it's something that it's not a get rich quick scheme. It's a career. So if you know of any businesses where you can just jump out of the gate and make a huge profit in your first year, let me know what those businesses are.
Online marketing.
Yeah. Well, when I did that, it took me 6 or 7 years to even figure out what the heck's even going on. So yeah, online marketing, there's different things that people always amaze us, right? The things that people can do when you guys set your mind to it, or when we set our mind to it, we can do anything, right? But in terms of expectations, having the right attitude of I'm learning, I'm doing my apprenticeship, I'm being a problem solver, I'm taking care of clients. That is the most important expectation, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I jokingly say that because if you're starting your tax business, then you will definitely need to know how to market and sell, right? And there's a lot of ways you can get started doing that. And so looking to next week on the activation step as the next step that we're going to talk about, that is where you have to build, test, and validate your unique selling proposition. So I'm excited to get into that next week. Just to kind of wrap up our time here, you had mentioned some new trends that are happening. Kind of this industry as a whole is aging, and there's a lot of folks that are kind of nervous about this new tax law that just came out. So talk to me a little bit about that trend that we were talking about before.
So I think a lot of people, and maybe even you, if you're listening to this, are wondering, is this still a good business? In light of the new tax law, they're saying 94% of people won't need to itemize deductions. So for previously, that was a great segment of the market. Itemized deductions means that somebody's a homeowner, they're writing off their mortgage interest, their real estate taxes. It's tougher to do it yourself, right? But it's really not that hard. So that was a great segment of the market that, we're not sure if that segment of the market will stay around. They probably will, a lot of them transition to more do-it-yourself. But at the same time, you see a lot of very great opportunities opening up. So you got to put yourself, and by listening to this podcast, you're putting yourself in the mindset of an opportunity seeker, and not only that, Jeff, but an opportunity creator. So you can look at trends like by 2020, which is like tomorrow, 50% of American workers will be self-employed. If you're self-employed and doing your own taxes, this is like, good luck to you. Good luck. You're going to contact us later because you're going to need help. And so that's a great market. Like if you're working with, I know you're very entrepreneurial too. So people that have side businesses or people that, what does this self-employment trend mean for you as a professional? It means you have a great opportunity. And the second major trend that we see, Jeff, is I think it's about 70%, don't quote me on this, but 75% of CPAs will retire in the next 15 years. And a huge percentage of high-level tax professionals, whether they're CPAs, EAs, or just experienced, really good tax preparers, if you go to these conferences, you'll see it's people that are 60, it's people that are 70, it's people that are 80. So tax business is great because it's like reverse ageist. Like the older you are, like the better things go because you know more. And so that's one of the things that seniors really enjoy about the business is because your experience is respected. At the same time, you come to a time, especially if you're running a very busy tax business, where you need to slow down. And so you have a huge demographic opportunity right now where you have independent tax professionals that have 2,000 clients, 3,000 clients, 5,000 clients, 10,000 clients, and are going to need help for that next phase of their business. So if you're getting into the business, that is a huge opportunity.
I can't wait to talk about that in further steps on the Pronto Path.
Yeah, that will definitely be something that we touch on again. And I wanted to mention one other thing in this initiation phase before we kind of wrap this up is find that mentor. At least one mentor. It's kind of tough sometimes to find a mentor in the tax business because people that really know a lot about taxes are so busy. And so that's why a lot of times it does go to being a family business where the mother or the father is willing to spend that time, invest that time. But if you can find that mentor or maybe a couple mentors earlier in your career, it will make such a huge difference. So don't forget when you're looking for a mentor, what can you bring to that mentor? Why is it going to be fun for them to work with you and invest their valuable time into you? But I did want to mention that idea of finding a mentor. At least one is going to be so, it will accelerate you so much quickly or so much quicker through the initiation phase.
Absolutely. No, and I'll say one thing about mentors. The number one thing to show a mentor value is to actually follow their advice, actually go do what they're saying, and actually be a positive example of their advice, right?
Because people love to see their knowledge, doing something good for somebody else. But I think you're right, because if you take the time to find a mentor and you get all this great advice and then you don't do it, it's kind of like a buzzkill. But the opposite happens, that if you're taking action on that advice, you're getting results. It's like it's a positive thing for that mentor. And it also just trains you about like, hey, you're going to go mentor somebody else. And a lot of times, what we're trying to build in this community, the Tax Pro Nation community, is something where we get into a virtuous cycle. People are helping people, and we have a lot of people out on their own island, thinking that I can't help anybody else out because they'll take my clients or whatever else. But if we really look at it, we have a lot to help each other with, and we can do a lot better when we have some teamwork going. So that's kind of our thesis for this show and a lot of things that we're doing. And definitely want to thank you guys for listening in and for any feedback that you offer.
Yeah, real quick before we go, you had mentioned a few things there at the end I wanted to comment on. The individual tax prep is getting kind of dicey, right? If everyone can just say, I'm going to claim the standard deduction and I file my taxes on a postcard. And you talked about the huge opportunity in this space for folks. It's small business, right? It's business tax preparation. In your opinion, are we going to see a mass movement of individual tax preparers moving into the business space to stay alive?
Yes, and that's something that I saw actually happening 2 years ago, which is why we invested all the time and resources to build out the Business Tax Verified training program with CPA Adam Shea. And that program it enables our members to make that transition. And I want to encourage you guys to when people hear small business, a lot of times they think, somebody that has like a retail shop, or they have employees, or like, and they kind of think to themselves, well, I'm not really ready for that. Like, I know that person's probably pretty intense, but like small business, it runs the gamut now. Like, you have people that are freelancing on the side. Okay, made $1,000 doing video production. That's a small business,
right?
They need tax help. Like, when you're a tax pro, you look for a delta and a difference between if they did it themselves versus if I help them out. Is there a money difference between that? Like, can you actually present positive ROI? And is there a stress and a time savings?
Yeah.
So if you have those two things, ROI, like hard dollar ROI, and then ROI of I don't have to deal with this, I have somebody I can trust, I have somebody I can help you out, you're in a sweet spot. So that's why the individual market right now, parts of it are getting dicey. I don't want to jump and say like, oh, it's all just going, but look at it. Like, do you have that difference between if I do my own taxes online versus coming to you, am I going to get more money if I come to you or pay less, whatever that hard dollar ROI is? And also, is the stress and the uncertainty, it might be done wrong, I could get audited, et cetera, of doing it myself, significant? So if you don't have that, or if you see that kind of slipping away, look to the business market and get some training in that market to protect yourself and have a great opportunity moving forward.
Perfect. Well, this has been great. I've had a lot of good idea moments happen here. So I hope this was helpful to you, the listeners. And let's do this again next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I have been Jeff Dolan.
And I've been Andy Fry.
Thank you for listening, y'all. All of the show notes for this episode can be found at taxpronation.com/1. That's the number 1. We have actually created an infographic of the Pronto Path, so you can see all the steps in one place. Go ahead and download that on the same page. We hope this episode made your life a little bit easier and more profitable. Join us next week as we continue down the Pronto Path. Take care.